Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you very much for coming back for our last talk of the day. We are joined now by contemporary artist Paulina Olowska. She's going to be speaking about how the Young Poland movement has influenced her own practice. So I will hand you over directly to Paulina now. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me for this amazing and full of history, but also undiscovered history talk. And I'm very proud to be a part of it. And to be honest, the interest of young Poland came really naturally to my work. I guess, that would be the topic of my talk, to talk about the empirical, the understanding by being and seeing, and to have my story of working as a contemporary artist, short. 12 years ago, I had moved from Berlin to Rabka-Zdrój, which is a 45 minutes village outside of Zakopane. And I had moved exactly, that was the year, the installation that you see is the year of 2008. And basically I had moved to Rabka because of Zofia Stryjeńska. And why Zofia Stryjeńska? I guess, first of all, it was her biography, which is incredible autobiography written by her. It's a little bit in between sketches and footnotes and talking about everydayness, but talking about her process. So when in 2008, I was invited to Berlin Biennale, which was about modernism, I proposed to work to make a tableau vivant, or a larger installation. This is what you see in the Schinkel Pavilion, based on the Arts and Crafts Paris Pavilion in 1925. So if we can go to the next slide. Here you see the panels, the large paintings of Zofia Stryjeńska, together with the others, arts and craft movement on Zakopane. And forgive me if they're, because we have amazing specialists. So as a contemporary artist, if I get dates or something wrong, please step in. And Stryjeńska and the Pavilion, the Polish Pavilion, had won an award for it. So when I was invited to do the Schinkel Pavilion, which is the octagon building, I kind of thought of the same idea of connection to the 1925 pavilion, meaning this kind of crystal floor repetition of black, white, and gray. And if we move to the next slide, we could see that. So the installation was how one art historian, a feminist art historian, had described it, the idea of the dance. Yes. So basically, the particularity about my upbringing was that I'm both Polish and American. I studied in the United States. I had lived part of my time, my youth, in the States. So for me, dealing with the aspects of culture come very fresh, yes, meaning that I wasn't kind of put into the head in high school and so on about the icons. I tried to find my own icons, and with a sense of maybe, after art education, understanding its context and so on. And I just wouldn't understand why Zofia Stryjeńska was still not put in the proper attention. So by doing research in both National Museum in Krakow and Warsaw Museum, and actually getting in touch with her granddaughter who lives in Geneva, still, I started to weave this history of interpretation versus the original. So what you see is black and white paintings that I had prepared for the Biennale that are juxtaposed with original panel paintings that existed. Some of them she hid in an attic that are in color. So we could go to the next slide. And some of the work was first time renovated after the years. And basically what I wanted to jump in about her style, for me as an art student, it was amazing to see both the kind of movement towards, I would say, cubism from one side, but the huge reference to folklore, together with reference to womanhood, which she had very much, and passion, which she talked about a lot, and sexuality, and animals, who are beautifully described. So here on the back is the original poster for Polska for the 1925 Biennale that I had also painted my own version for the 2008 Biennale in Berlin. So the idea was how do you speak with the artists from the past? So I wanted to finish up on this image, because in a way, as much as the whole place was an overall exhibition, I wanted to present paintings from the back to also show, like, you know, there are stories in the back of the painting. So we could move to the next slide. Okay, so after this time, like 2009, I was about to make a decision for where is going to be my place for making art. And this experience of being very close to, you know, like trying to embody and understand Zofia's work brought me to Rabka, where she actually worked briefly for a puppet theater called Rabcio. And when I had moved here, Rabka is not so vivid and I would say outgoing, and not such a tourist place as Zakopane. It has a much more slower pace. But one thing that it was very popular of was puppet theater, because there was a lot of sanatoriums for children of bronchitis. So when I moved here, and I usually work in my work in the past with these ideas of like how trying to embrace aesthetic. And when I was living in Warsaw, it was much more, where do we bring modernism? Where do we bring, you know, like the idea of arts and crafts of 1960s? In Rabka, I was just kind of trying to look for any traces of you know, how do we, again, I'm going to use this, weave culture inside, and how do I, as a contemporary international artist, work with this small society in Rabka. So this building was, this is a painted version of mine. This is year 2012. And together with students from Gdansk and Krakow Academy, we proposed to paint this puppet theater with a mural. And we can go to next slide. And we can go to next slide. And usually I guess I wanted to present it to you all, this idea of kind of working with archives, of trying to re-understand in contemporary sense historical material. That when I found these photographs, and this is Jerzy Kolecki, one puppet theater play from 1960s, I thought this is so incredible, and they're laying in the basement of a little puppet theater. So based on his design, we made the mural on the theater. We could go to next one. So these are some of the posters of that puppet theater. There's not an existing Zofia Stryjeńska's puppets, but actually in some of the footnotes and reference, she created the puppets that were very close to what the National Museum in Krakow has, the toys of Stryjeńska. And we can go to next slide. So I guess what I was again interested in, and for me, that's why it's very beautiful to be a part of this talk, because I'm a big lover, I'm going to say, of arts and crafts. And as a contemporary artist that I had worked in and visited many contemporary schools, the idea of the high art and conceptualism is like so at the moment for me overloaded, that I really want to focus on looking for and researching, you know, like things that need much more attention. And I think this is a goal of curators, of museums, but also of some artists. So this is an example of how I work with local architecture, like work, how I try to describe the subject of the local architecture. And this is a close-up of my show in Kunsthalle Basel. where basically not knowing ceramic, I started to make ceramic in Rabka, in the small ceramic studio with children. And the children actually had helped me, you know, because I put myself into this vulnerable position. And in the back, you see some posters that I was using as the temples to repaint the mural. We can go to next one. And we can go to next one. So I guess what as much as it's not so much about the topic of young Poland arts and crafts, I wanted to share with you this I guess this importance of there are new ways of calling it, but working with you know, with the regional, yes. And my biggest goal was to move outside of the city, was that I was basically tired, like the young art movement artists, of, you know, being always in the, you know, centers of towns and not being really understanding what art, contemporary art, has a relationship with the people that they see it. So we could move to the next one. So by doing so and living that sculpture, ceramic sculptures from 2014, I had discovered just how, for example, you know, things that have amazing stories and are very regional are slightly disappearing. They're being forgotten because of the new system. They're being, you know, demolished. And this is a house. This is a house that at the moment I call the Creative House of Kadenówka, but actually it was called Villa Kadenówka. And it's an example of architecture. We could move to the next slide so we could see it in real. It's an example of architecture which is quite nice in relationship to Zakopane. It's Huculian modernism, Zakopane style. And it was the villa was created in 1932 by Adam Kaden, who was a many virtue man, and he was close to Witkacy. He knew of Iwaszkiewicz. I found out recently with Krikoteka that the first Krikot was coming to visit, and he wanted to build a house that was in between a theater and a kind of a residency house. We could go to the next slide. This is the house, and this is a picture from last year. So during the 8 last years, I was renovating the house, and I was using the context of you know, my work, my paintings, which I'm going to show on the end, to try to renovate it. I was looking for also local people. Like I worked with the woodmen and craftsmen, the Harkabus from the village of Harkabus, who helped me to remodel the roof. And finally, last year, we had put this building under protection. And I think I wanted to say how much we can talk about the beauty. You know, for me, it was the biggest goal was that I was able to save it, because this is an example of an architecture that, you know, that I was faced that either I'm going to take care of it or it's going to be demolished, because basically in small villages like Rabka, there are not a lot of, you know, architecture rights. And for God's sake, somebody wants to have a heritage buildings, which means a lot of, you know, paperwork and so on. Me, on the contrary, I felt it should be an example of architecture that stands for protection. And proudly, I can say that it's slowly in Rabka with, I could see the wooden architecture coming back and the houses not being burned or left to fall apart, but a certain nostalgia, but also the, you know, the kind of finding a relationship with this kind of architecture is existing. We can go to next one. So I'm going to show you right now some slides of performances and art events. So basically, before I had renovated the house, and it's still not renovated, we are working on lights and on heating. But the idea of the house is that it will be a residency house, and all the works that will be inside, from arts and crafts to the kitchen, to the wood, to the lamps, will be created jointly with contemporary artists that have a certain sensitivity to the region, to the folk, to understanding, even esoterica and subjects that I kind of feel much more relevant into living outside of the city. We can go to the next one. So this is, for example, a meeting of a Krakow artist, and it was done together with a foundation from Krakow. It's called the First Ceramic Workshop, which we want to continue. We can go to the next one. We can go to the next one. And it coincided with an exhibition of Professor Janina Kraupe-Świderska, who also I kind of found during my travels, research, getting to know Krakow. Just to say, I didn't say where I come from, but I was raised in Gdansk, then I lived in Chicago, then I did a few other residencies in different parts of the world. So it's also really new, this relationship with this place where I am now. We can go to the next one. We can go to the next one. This is, for example, a workshop, a picture from a workshop by Milos Mushitsky, a Serbian young astrologist that we started to have. It started to be very popular. We had it online as well, because astrology 2 years ago, when pandemic started to be really the way to understand what could happen. We can go to the next one. This is one of the openings. This was before, still when we could have regular openings, but some local people come, some people come from Krakow, some people who are interested, like the owner of Mimosa House from London came because she was interested in Janina Kraupe's work, and her work is a part of a show right now called The Cosmic Mother. We can go in London. We can go to the next one. This is, for example, an exhibition called Jardin Brun that I worked with an artist from Krakow who was using paper mache. He didn't have any artist representation, and it was his biggest installation that he had for the first time. And I thought his sensitivity to papier mache, the color, in relationship of the architecture worked really great. We can go to the next one. This is a close-up. And with the show, we also presented Zofia Rydet photographs, who in 1960s and 70s, she was photographing the peasant life in the regions of Lesser Poland, which is also quite interesting in the relationship to the folk. We can go to the next one. Next one, please. So during this time, I was able to, this is looking quite cozy, but the villa is like super cold. So we had traveling plein airs, yes, that I thought with artists, because we are so used to this opening, way of having a cigarette, quick wine, looking at the show and understanding and not knowing much about us, together with a Italian English foundation, Fiorucci Art Trust, we hosted Mycology Theatre, which is a combination of the love of mycology with the aspects of theatricality that I would say even, come closely to Grotowski. Next one, please. Next one. So during this time, we would either walk to the forest, and afterwards we would spend 3 days in the house. The artists still cannot live there because it's really cold, and it's a quite large building in comparison to the villas. Like I visited recently, amazing Villa Silence, Villa Cicha in Zakopane. So I would say it's 3 times the size. So, but we met there for visits, and if we show the next slide, we could see we had next one, please. And next one. This is during our walk. And next one. This is us walking. And next one. We also spoke about this relationship of nature, us to the work, our placement with current culture, where we want to be, and how do we want to continue making work. And I think we can go very quickly, one by one. Tom, we could go by showing just another kind of aspect of how we can continue. This is Iza Tarasevich puppet theater. Oh, I'm over my time. This is an installation based on Witkacı and Tate Modern, where I repeated the Mother, the unsavory play in 3 acts of Witkacı as a stage set in Tate Modern. And maybe we should end on this. I wanted to show, if Sophie and Julia will permit me, just a little bit, just going through slides, if Tom could say, my relationship with discussing the gems of that I see and find around us and on pages of Polish Vogue. So if we continue turning the slides. Oh, here are some representations of my paintings, but they're more for looking as paintings are. Please continue. So 3 years ago, I was invited to do the Polish Vogue as an art director, and I chose Krakow as my destination. So this is Laura Morgan in the National Museum in Krakow. She was embodying this different women and time of young Poland as well. We could continue. Here she is next to just one slide before, because this is the last one. Here she is next to the school, which was the Women Arts and Crafts School. Am I right? Which now is going to be, I think, taken as the Art Academy of Fine Arts, and the engraving, the Przemysłowa, yes, the Women Industrial School, I guess it would be more translated. And Laura is walking with a big bag of garlic, and we can go to the last one. And here I envision her as Queen Bona overtaking the director's office of the National Museum in Krakow. So this was a kind of, a light gesture to end.
Thank you so much, Paulina. That was really, really great. It was such a huge variety of different works that we got to see there. That was really, really fantastic. So thank you very much. Lots for us to absorb. It was also really great to see those exhibitions in the architectural buildings themselves as well. That was really fascinating. So I've got a few questions for you here, if that's okay. And one is actually linked to that. So how have the local people in the Kadenówka region reacted to the presence of the contemporary art community in their midst? Is there interest in this, amusement, perhaps some hostility? And was there any sort of community engagement work or consultation done with the local community before these artists came to the area?
Yes, it's a really good question, and it is I think all audience are quite it's a big task to be presenting work, and as since I have the opportunity to work with larger museums such as MoMA or Tate, but then I work with really local community, it gives me this verification of what the work could be. I must say they reacted really good, because first of all, they're so happy to see something happening. So of course there was the sense of bizarreness, but also many of them, they just love this house, and they remember it from the time that it was splitted during socialism into 5 apartments of nurses and doctors of the sanitarium of Rabka. So it was completely, divided and different from inside. And it took me a lot of time to bring it to the original form. And then we had, like women from the of the university, of the Free University of the Elderly, if I can say it like that, who come very often, and they want to help us to do the openings and so on. But I think it's a very fine and beautiful metaphor, and I want to be working with, like I had great schools coming, and it's still in process. Yes, so it's not as beautiful as a museum, but I'm hoping to make it work as a museum, as a residency for artists, and as a place for workshops and site-specific exhibitions. And definitely one of my goals is to work with community and bring artists from outside.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's a great answer there. Another question. You mentioned that you think it's important to be inspired by more traditional crafts and designs as opposed to high art. Why is that important to you?
Well, because I really believe that crafts are just fantastic and amazing, and I don't see the need of I understand, in high art, basically, if I would try to explain it very simply, there is this sense of a genius, yes? And I think what I really find out looking through crafts, even looking through Villa Ticha the other day, or coming to, I was able to make it to the exhibition of Young Poland in the Morris Gallery in London. I was a little bit, like emotionally moved, because I was seeing those families, coming with children. They were saying, "Oh, babcia would really like that," or the Polish English children were trying to read the posters and so on. And I think there is a certain modesty which we have with craft artists, which, a lot of the times when I even go to the ethnographical museums, there is the lack of the author, yes? Plus there is a sense of collaboration. And I think women especially, women's circles and so on, this was so great way of celebrating it. And it's definitely, I see myself as a contemporary artist, but I'm opening those chapters or those possibilities. And my wish in the future is to really work around the collaborative creativity, because as Kasia probably knows, and all the artists knows, it's also really nice to work collaboratively and not to be only, centered so much. So I guess this would be my first answer. But I think also, since I'm becoming much more interested in spiritualism and, let's say in cosmology in a larger sense of understanding, the craft movement has it all. And we just, where it just doesn't need to be spoken or, all is spoken out about it.
Fantastic, thank you. And I've actually got a question come through from one of our speakers. So Julia is interested in knowing a little bit more about your bobbin lace making project in the Zakopane school. I think she found something about it on the internet. So if you could tell us a little bit about this project, that would be lovely.
Well, thank you, Julia. Well, I started to do this research last year on women-run art schools and places, women that open up institutions, from tiny ones to, the women of Bauhaus, to the Pasadena College of Art, and so on. And I had found in the Mazurian a beautiful school with arts and crafts. But then, since I'm close to here, I had contacted the Museum of Zakopane, which I'm also a huge fan of. And we, or maybe in the research, I just found out about Helena Modrzejewska opening the museum for the young women of Zakopane, opening the bobbing lace school. And, then I learned about Karol Klosowski and his investment in it and so on. And I'm on the beginning, I'm sure you are all specialists, but first of all, the lace and tapestry and the coming back of crafts, I wouldn't call it, not crafts, like batik you mentioned, like gobelins, like like the big kind of tapestry that kind of existed in 1960s that Abakanowicz was presenting, they all slowly have a moment of coming back. And I feel, for a long time, but the paintbrush was something that was the most valuable, but also the knitting as a method of much more meditation and, like really focusing becomes much more of a task. So because also the workshops are kind of put into different places of how do we work with different topics. And when something comes as an interesting topic, like, like more and more I hear about the different artists being interested in dreams and how they want to work deeply with understanding dreams. Or Professor Jania Kraupa-Świderska, she introduced this like automatism and hypnotization and to get into the mood of creativity. I thought that it would be a really nice topic to bring this historical movement back. And I thought of, I didn't, yet frame it, but I thought of trying to propose more to men to come and do the bob lacing, because I feel that there is this, in contemporary art, the struggle where the, what is the future of arts and craft and masculinity could go. So, but I actually wanted to get in touch with Julia because she knows much more about it. So I'm kind of humble, and thank you so much for inviting me. But I'm much more in this, also in the spirit of like maybe being in between an arts and crafts artist and fine artist, that whenever I feel a passion, I just work towards this side. And then sometimes the understanding why I was even interested in it, comes later. But definitely this point of moving from the city to the village just marked a huge moment in my career, or my making of works. And I found that like even being surrounded by the forest, one could, as an artist, could have a huge amount of creativity coming in as well.
Absolutely. And that actually provides a very nice segue into our final question, just thinking about the kind of elements, I suppose, and the environment that you're in. So our final question is, you mentioned that it's very cold and very harsh sort of weather in these regions. Do you think that this element of discomfort helps with the creation of art, sort of literally taking people out of their comfort zones in being in that space to create?
Oh, that's a good question too. I often complain about my girlfriends in the city and not having enough cappuccinos and good cinema. But actually during the pandemic, it brought also, I think, for many thinkers and us, this kind of relationship of having the relationship with nature and what is more important really, and what can be a way of surviving in the future. So I must say, with harshness comes a certain understanding, and when we are brought up by culture, we are used to a lot of comfortable things, yes. And I guess seeing even the seasons kind of changing, I think it influenced hugely the way I work and I paint. When I was working in my earlier years, I was much more interested in performance and silk screening and things that I could do very quickly, in Berlin or in New York with the help of others. Where here I still get help from the Art Academy of Krakow. I work sometimes with young students from the academy, like on the mural, and also sometimes in my studio. But it brings a huge difference of understanding that you are closed in and you spend 1-2 weeks of working and being inside and not being tempted, by just going somewhere or by the city. So I'm learning it, but I think, it does have, I like the word harshness as well. I think harshness is good.
Good for the soul.
Yeah.
I have just seen 2 more questions from participants, so I will ask those, but I'm conscious of the time, so if we can just kind of go through those relatively quickly as possible. So the first one is, why do you think it's important to tell children about this, and what impact do you think it will have on them?
Well, I think the person that had asked us, they already know the answer. I can tell you this anecdote of just watching the children, the puppet theater. Yes, so back when I was a child in Gdansk, I would be with my school, and we would be kind of forced to go to the Miniatura puppet theater in Gdansk, and I didn't really like it. I thought it's much better to watch 1980s TV. But being here and seeing actually, buses from different villages coming and seeing the plays and seeing the interaction of live actors, but also using the dolls and using the different types of marionettes, and seeing this reaction of children and the theater just brought me to another kind of sort of chill, because I thought that they really understand it and they're in this fantasy land. And it's a much more emotional impact than than just watching flat TV. So I think I just see how my stepson, he reacts. He lives in Warsaw, and then he comes during pandemic, and with a little tractor he drives in the fields just to get his stress out of doing the homeschooling and so on. So I think it's really important in many ways, but the best is to try it out.
Absolutely, yeah, I can definitely see the benefit for children there as well. Okay, so our final question then is, do you know what the reaction to the Young Poland movement is in countries like Russia and Austria?
Ooh.
Not sure whether this is
Julia is laughing. Maybe Julia should.
Yeah, this feels like more of a Julia question.
I can only tell that that when I showed some of my painting for Garage in Moscow, which I painted the 1960s women weaved sweaters, that the curator said, I don't know why, but all the other curators are laughing at your paintings. I still don't understand why. But Julia, maybe would you like to answer that?
Thank you, Paulina. Thank you, Sophie. Well, I don't know what the reaction is. I don't know if it has been investigated, but I will have two short anecdotes to share. My British husband's best friend is German. He was our best man at our wedding. And we did have a discussion whether it would or would not be appropriate to invite him and his parents to the opening of Young Poland, because we didn't want to sort of upset them. And another little anecdote, when we actually hosted Matt's parents, Gundela and Rene, here in our village, we wanted to take them to a traditional British pub, the Jackdaw, totally forgetting that its claim to fame is that it had served as a location for the Battle of Britain. And it was really embarrassing because we came in and it's sort of full of the Battle of Britain memorabilia. So I think the world has become such a global village. That I do think that that Young Poland brings people together, and it is what it is.
Brilliant. Thank you very much to both of you for those answers. And thank you indeed to all of our speakers for the time that you've given us today. And of course, a huge thank you to everybody that came today. I really hope that you've all learned something new and will be inspired and excited to learn a little bit more in your own time. As I said, I'll be sending through slides if I get speakers' permission, and other links for relevant to the session today. Thank you so much. I hope that we'll see you at one of our sessions in the future, and have a lovely rest of your day.